You are in love with that person, right? You do not want to talk to anyone, but you could talk to this person for hours. How long does a reply to your messages take? 1 minute? 1 hour? 1 day? You accommodate this person in every way because you care, because you are in love. You love so deeply. You want the one you love to be by your side constantly, forever. What if this is not love at all? What if what you actually want is the effort to turn the person you love into someone you can always find, someone who can never surprise you or leave you? Today, we are looking at a story about a guy who took the nice guy obsession to its absolute darkest extreme. By the end of this video, you will question your own romantic intentions. You will see the monster hiding behind love. You will be more real, my friend. Why do we constantly confuse the desperate need to control someone with being in love? John Fowles published The Collector in 1963, and the main character, Frederick Clegg, is not a dramatic villain. He is not someone you would pick out of a crowd as dangerous. He is quiet. He is polite. He works an ordinary government clerk job, keeps to himself, and never makes trouble for anyone. He has a serious hobby, collecting butterflies. He catches them with real skill, kills them humanely, and pins them into glass cases with careful, dedicated precision. Everything is in its place. Everything is completely still. Everything is exactly how he arranged it. And then there is Miranda Gray. Miranda is an art student. She is alive enough to fill every room she enters. She has ideas, energy, and a creative life existing completely independent of anyone else's approval. Clegg has been watching her for a long time, from across streets, through windows, from the distance of a man who turned observation into a discipline. He knows her schedule. He knows her roots. By watching, imagining, and wanting, he built a fully detailed version of Miranda inside his head, and he has been living inside that version for so long it feels completely real to him. He calls what he feels love. And here is the first genuinely disturbing thing about this book. Looking from inside his experience, it really does feel like love. He thinks about her constantly. He wants her to be happy. He believes being near her would improve both their lives. The problem is he never actually talked to her. He was never surprised by her, never disagreed with her, never encountered any part of her that did not fit his image of her in his head. He is in love with a character he wrote himself, giving her a role without her knowing. And then he wins the lottery. Now he has a lot of money. Why do some people genuinely believe that acting like a nice guy entitles them to someone else's affection? Because Clegg has an entire internal accounting system working in his head. He was patient. He was respectful. He never forced, pressured, or bothered anyone. All that patience piled up in his head like a debt the universe owes him. He was a good person. He waited. He deserves a reward. And the reward he decided he deserves is Miranda. He buys a house in the English countryside with the lottery money, a house with a basement, and he spends months preparing that basement with the same careful attention he shows to his butterfly cases. Good air circulation, a proper bathroom, books she might like, comfortable furniture. He thinks of everything. He tells himself he is building a place where she will eventually be happy. He knocks her out with chloroform in a parking lot, drives her to the countryside, and the girl wakes up underground in a stranger's house with absolutely no way out. And here is the part nobody expects. He is polite. He brings her food on proper plates. He brings her books and art supplies. He does not threaten her. He calls her Miss Gray, which is somehow much more terrifying than any aggression. Calmly, he explains that he loves her. He says he watched her for a long time. He says he wants her to know him, and he believes if she does, she will love him too. He is completely sure this will happen. There is absolutely no doubt in his certainty. What happens when you trap the person of your dreams, but that person refuses to follow the perfect script you created in your head? Miranda does not follow the script, not even a little bit. She is furious, terrified, and extremely smart, and she immediately starts evaluating every possible angle. She talks to him using logic. She appeals to his conscience. She tries to build a real connection with him. She attempts a seduction originating not from desire but from strategy, looking for any power shift that could give her a way out. She keeps pushing, keeps trying, keeps refusing to shrink, to become manageable, or to stay quiet. None of it works. Clegg has a gentle, unshakable answer for everything. He accepts she is upset. He says he understands this is hard right now. He says he believes she will see things differently in time. Then he brings her another book she might like. The care is real. Fowles makes sure you understand this. Clegg is not pretending to be nice as a tactic. He is actually nice, in his own weird and terrifying way. He truly considers her comfort. He genuinely wants her to be okay. But this care exists in a world having nothing to do with what the girl actually feels, wants, or needs. The real Miranda, that Miranda with a life, people who love her, and the art she is in the middle of making, is a burden for his story. So he puts her aside and waits for the girl to disappear into the version he created. Why do we try to force vibrant, independent people into tiny cages of our own expectations? Because a real person is always more than a fantasy. A real person has opinions conflicting with yours, needs you are not prepared for, and a whole inner world that does not consult your feelings before existing. A fantasy stays exactly where you put it. Clegg lived comfortably with his fantasy Miranda for years. The real Miranda in his basement, arguing, refusing, and stubbornly remaining herself in every way she can, is a destruction he does not know how to handle, so he waits for her to stop. Fowles gives us her perspective through Miranda's diary in the second part of the book, and the girl sees everything with devastating clarity even from inside the situation. She figures out an important thing about what Clegg actually wants. He does not want a relationship in any normal sense. He does not want romance, physical intimacy, or a real connection. What he wants is the girl's presence on his terms. He wants her to become still, to be permanent, to be his. He wants her the way he wants his butterflies, beautiful, arranged, going nowhere, and completely devoid of their own will. Why does capturing something wild and beautiful always guarantee its absolute destruction? Because wildness is not a trait surviving in captivity. The thing making the butterfly worth catching was that it was flying. If you pin it, you keep its shape, but its life is gone. Miranda is alive, arguing, demanding, creating, and refusing to submit, and each of these is proof she is still herself, and each of these is a problem for the thing Clegg is trying to have. He does not want to fall in love with the real Miranda because the real Miranda requires him to be vulnerable, to risk abandonment, and to accept the girl has a self completely outside his control. The pinned version is safer. The pinned version can go nowhere. And look, the book is extreme. Clegg is an extreme. But let's be honest about something. The logic beneath his obsession exists everywhere, in smaller, more common forms. That person doing good things for someone they want and then feeling genuinely betrayed when feelings do not automatically reciprocate. That relationship where one person slowly and quietly shrinks the other, making the partner have fewer opinions, making that partner less themselves, and neither of them fully realizing how it happens. That person whose love is loaded with so much monitoring and expectation that the partner forgets what freedom felt like. Clegg is what happens when this logic goes to the absolute end with nothing stopping it. How do we convince ourselves we are the victim, even while we are actively destroying someone else's life? Because Clegg does this constantly. He has a woman imprisoned in his basement against her will, and somehow he arranged his thinking so he is the one being wronged. She is ungrateful. She does not appreciate his thoughtfulness. She makes things unnecessarily difficult. She hurts him by refusing to love him after everything he did. The reality of what he is doing to the girl is completely invisible to him because he wrapped the entire situation in the language of patient devotion. His feelings are a story. The girl's imprisonment is a detail. Miranda keeps pushing another thing she noticed. Clegg does not want a physical relationship in a traditional sense. What he wants is a more specific thing. He wants ownership. He wants her the way a collector wants a completed set. The butterflies in the cases are not alive, but they are his. Perfectly and permanently his, arranged the way he chose, always exactly where he put them. Miranda being fully alive and completely herself is an obstacle to what he is actually after. Why do we secretly hate it when the people we claim to adore show their messy, real, independent thoughts? Because independence means they might choose something different than what you want. Independence means they have a self existing completely outside your story about them. A fantasy of someone is always simpler than their reality. You cannot lose a fantasy. You cannot be contradicted by it. You cannot be abandoned by it. Clegg does not want the living Miranda because the living Miranda comes with all the risk of a real thing. He wants that still version, the version that stays. And then Miranda gets seriously ill. It turns from a small thing into something genuinely requiring medical attention. She has a chest infection getting worse, and she needs a doctor. And she asks for a doctor, and Clegg can clearly see she needs a doctor. Clegg does not call anyone. Can real intimacy ever exist if one person holds all the power and the other lives in constant fear? No, period. No matter how long it lasts, the thing Clegg built can never be intimacy under any circumstances. Real intimacy requires two people who are both free and both choosing. The moment freedom disappears, everything following it is survival behavior. Miranda does not choose to be with him. She manages him. She reads his weaknesses, calculates his reactions, and tries to survive inside a situation she had zero part in creating. These are completely different things from being in a relationship with someone. He does not call the doctor because calling the doctor ends the story. The outside world enters the basement. Someone sees the situation for what it is. That love story he built in his head, that patient courtship, that inevitable understanding, gets exposed as something with a very different name. Protecting his delusion is more important to him than the girl's life. And the girl dies. Miranda dies in that basement. And he mourns. He really does. He sits alone with that loss in his limited, closed-off way. He felt real feelings there, or the closest thing to real feelings. He feels her absence. He mourns the fantasy he can no longer access. Why do we prefer the silent, perfect fantasy of a person over real love? Because real love is uncertain and requires constant risk, and the other person is always more than you expected, and sometimes it ends, and nothing goes the way you planned. The fantasy is clean. The fantasy is yours without negotiation. Clegg's butterfly cases are perfect exactly because the butterflies can no longer move. They stay exactly where he arranged them, exactly as beautiful as the moment he caught them, completely and forever his. After a period of mourning, he starts thinking about a girl catching his attention recently. She reminds him of Miranda in certain ways. He begins making observations. He starts thinking about what he will adjust next time. He is already planning. If your obsession stayed with you for a long time, would you finally recognize the monster you have become? Clegg does not recognize it. The book ends there, in that quiet, terrifying place, with absolutely no recognition, no clarity, no moment where he looks at what he did and sees it clearly. He finishes mourning and starts preparing. The cycle will happen again, and he does not experience himself as a monster. He experiences himself as an unlucky person. Someone who will find what he is looking for under better conditions. Fowles was describing something in 1963 that has not become rare since then. That person tracking a partner's location and calling it valuing the relationship. That relationship where someone's full self slowly becomes a burden, and that individual starts trimming themselves down to fit the provided space. That person keeping a list of everything done for a crush and feeling a growing resentment as the list gets longer without the expected return. That logic saying wanting someone enough is a way of deserving that person. That logic saying patience and politeness are a currency romantic love is forced to accept. Real love does not work like that. Real love is two people fully seeing each other, including those complicated, troublesome, and surprising parts, and choosing to stay. It is uncertain by nature. It requires you to accept the other person is truly free, free to stay and free to go, and to love that person anyway, knowing all of this. That independence is not a threat to real love. That independence is a part of what you love. Miranda deserves someone who loved her alive, someone wanting to know the real her, someone who would be genuinely interested in her ideas, her art, and the ways she was difficult and unexpected. Someone loving the arguments, that vitality, and every way she refused to be arranged. You deserve that kind of love too, and so does the person you love. There is a clear line between loving someone and wanting to add a person to a collection. Loving someone means wanting that person free, wanting that person completely naturally, wanting that person to fully exist, even if that existence sometimes moves away from you. Wanting to collect someone means wanting that person still, wanting that person manageable, wanting that person to exist inside the borders of your idea in your head and nowhere else. One of these is love. The other is monstrosity. Make sure you know which one you are offering.